You wake to the smell of wet wood burning. Your lungs ache. The fire in front of you is almost dead, just a heap of gray embers radiating faint heat into the pitch-black room. Your breath comes out in clouds. The earthen floor beneath you is pulling warmth from your spine, your legs, your skull. 72 hours ago, you made a choice that felt obvious, that felt smart, that felt like survival instinct at its purest. And now you're trapped inside the consequences. This isn't a story about wild animals or starvation or getting lost in a blizzard. This is about the one thing you'd do immediately to stay alive in freezing conditions without modern technology, the move that feels so right your body screams for it, and how that single decision becomes the silent killer nobody talks about. The death trap isn't outside. It's the instinct itself. So what would you do first? You're alone in a cold stone dwelling in late autumn, northern Europe. No electricity, no insulation, just damp firewood and wool clothing. The answer almost everyone gives is the same. Get warm, chase the fire, feed it everything you have, and sit as close as possible until your skin tingles and the cold backs off. It's instinct. It's survival. And it's the mistake that kills you before the third sunrise. If you're here for realistic historical survival breakdowns with no romanticizing and no sensationalism, just the physics and psychology of staying alive in conditions our ancestors actually faced, hit subscribe. We're not doing clickbait disasters. We're doing the quiet math of death and the small choices that decide everything. Quick question. Where are you watching from? And what temperature is it right now where you are? Let's establish the rules of this world. You're in a single-room structure somewhere in northern Europe, late October, maybe early November. The walls are stone or clay-packed timber. There's one small window, shuttered with wood. The door is rough planks, no rubber seal, gaps you can see daylight through. The floor is packed earth or unfinished boards over dirt. The ceiling is low, thatch or timber, smoke-stained black from decades of fires. You have a stone hearth along one wall. You have an armload of firewood, maybe 2 days' worth if you're careful, but most of it is damp from storage outside. You have wool clothing, a cloak, maybe a pelt or two, no matches. You have flint and steel, no thermometer, but the nights drop close to freezing, and inside the dwelling, without fire, the temperature follows right behind. Condensation forms on the walls. Your breath is visible even at midday. Food is scarce. Some grain, a bit of salted fish, maybe old bread. The next resupply isn't guaranteed. There is no rescue. This is just November. And November is long. Here's the killer instinct: chasing warmth at all costs. Specifically, overfeeding the fire, sitting too close, and letting your body overheat in the short term while destroying your ability to regulate temperature over the next 72 hours. It feels perfect. You're cold, you're scared, and fire is the answer. So you load the hearth. You get the flames high. You sit close enough that your face stings and your wool cloak starts to smell scorched. Your body floods with relief. The shivering stops. You even start to sweat a little under your layers. That sweat is the beginning of the end. Day 1. You make the choice. The fire is roaring. You're feeding it constantly because stopping means the cold comes back, and you're not willing to feel that again. You're burning through your damp wood fast, but it's worth it. You feel warm, you feel safe, except your inner wool layer is now damp with sweat. Your cloak, heavy and insulating when dry, is starting to hold moisture against your skin. You don't notice yet because the fire is still strong. But the fuel is going faster than you planned. By nightfall, you've used half your supply. You bank the coals and lie down near the hearth. You're exhausted from the adrenaline, the relief, the heat. You sleep hard. Day 2. You wake up cold, colder than yesterday. The fire is low. You rebuild it. But now you're using the last of the dry wood. Everything else is damp, and damp wood smokes more than it burns. The room fills with a gray haze that sits low, right at face level when you're lying down. Your eyes sting, your throat feels raw. You cough. You open the door a crack to vent, but that lets in freezing air, so you close it again. The smoke stays. You keep feeding the fire because you're shivering again, but this time it's worse. Your clothing is damp now. Sweat from yesterday, condensation from the smoke and your breath, moisture from sitting too close to wet burning wood. Damp wool doesn't insulate. It pulls heat away from your skin. You're colder now, sitting next to the fire, than you were yesterday with no fire at all. You don't understand why. You just feel the cold spreading, so you move closer. You overheat again. You sweat again. The cycle tightens. Day 3. The trap snaps shut. You're out of dry fuel. Everything you burn now produces thick smoke and minimal heat. You can't stay inside with the smoke, but you can't stay warm outside. Your clothing is soaked with sweat, smoke oil condensation, and moisture from the air. Wet fabric against skin in near freezing temperatures is a heat sink. Your core temperature is dropping. You're shivering violently now, uncontrollably. You can't think clearly. You make a desperate choice. Feed the fire everything, get one last burst of heat. But the damp wood doesn't catch. It smolders. The smoke is unbearable. You stumble outside. The wind hits your wet clothing. Within minutes, your body is losing heat faster than it can produce it. You go back inside. The smoke chokes you. You go back out. You're stuck between two kinds of death. Hypothermia outside, suffocation inside. The instinct to get warm killed your fuel supply, soaked your insulation, and filled your shelter with poison. And you never saw it coming. Here's what actually works. First principle: dryness is survival. Your clothing must stay dry, which means you cannot sweat. That means you never sit close enough to the fire to overheat. You keep the fire small, just enough to take the edge off the cold. Not enough to make you comfortable. Comfort is a trap. You manage your layers. When you're active, even just moving around the room, preparing food or organizing supplies, you remove a layer and hang it where air circulates, but away from direct heat. When you're still, you add it back. You rotate garments near the fire to dry any dampness from condensation, but never close enough to scorch. Scorched wool loses structure. Dead fibers don't insulate. Second principle: fuel triage. You don't burn everything on day 1. You sort your wood. The driest pieces are sacred. You use them only for ignition and for the coldest hours, between 3 and 5 in the morning. Everything else, the damp wood, you split into smaller pieces and set near the fire, not in it, to dry over the course of the day. You burn the driest of yesterday's damp wood today. Tomorrow you burn today's damp wood, now dried. You're always one day ahead. A small fire burning dry fuel produces more heat and infinitely less smoke than a large fire burning wet wood. Embers are your weapon. A bed of coals radiates steady heat for hours. You don't need flames. Flames are for cooking and morale. Coals are for survival. Third principle: ventilation without freezing. Smoke rises. You need it to escape, but you can't vent at ground level, or you lose all your heat. If you have any control over airflow, you crack the top of the door or create a tiny gap near the ceiling. Cold air comes in low, near the floor, which is already cold. Warm air and smoke leave high. You never fully seal the room. Carbon monoxide is silent. It doesn't smell. By the time you feel drowsy and confused, you're already dying. A thin finger-width crack somewhere high is enough to keep you alive without losing enough heat to matter. Fourth principle: insulate from below. The ground is the enemy. Earth and wood pull heat directly from your body. You never sleep on bare floor. You layer. Straw or rushes first, then pelts or folded wool. Then your body, then a cloak or blanket over you. 3 layers between you and the floor minimum. If you don't have 3, you use your firewood. You sleep on stacked logs covered with fabric. It's uncomfortable. It keeps you alive. Fifth principle: food is fuel. You eat fat, tallow, lard, butter, fish oil, anything dense. Carbohydrates burn fast. Fat burns slow and produces steady body heat for hours. You drink warm water, not hot, just warm, throughout the day. Dehydration makes you colder. You eat before you sleep. A small amount. So your body has fuel to burn while you're unconscious, and your core temperature naturally drops. The most dangerous hours are between 3 and 5 in the morning. Your core temperature is at its lowest. The fire, no matter how well you managed it, is reduced to a handful of embers. The cold outside is at its peak. This is when your body is most vulnerable. This is when small mistakes become fatal. You wake up shivering. Your instinct is to get up, rebuild the fire immediately, move around to generate heat. Wrong. Movement without fuel burns your reserves. You stay still. You pull your layers tighter. You add the dried garment you set aside earlier. You breathe slowly, conserving energy. Only then do you carefully add 1 piece of your driest wood to the embers. You blow gently, not hard. Hard blowing scatters ash and can extinguish coals. You nurse it. A single flame appears. You add a second piece. You wait. The fire builds. Only when it's stable do you sit up. You've survived the window. One night, a spark jumps. It lands in the straw near your bedding. You smell it before you see it. Smoldering plant fiber. That specific acrid scent. You don't panic. You move the straw away from the ember. You step on the ember. You check for others. Panic makes you clumsy. And clumsiness in a room full of flammable material and limited water is death. You were awake because you trained yourself to wake every few hours. You checked the fire, the smoke level, the gaps in the door. This is discipline. Discipline is survival. What keeps you alive through 72 hours in freezing conditions without technology isn't toughness. It's not willpower. It's physics and discipline stacked into small, boring decisions. You don't chase warmth. You manage it. You don't burn everything. You ration it. You don't stay comfortable. You stay dry. The instinct that kills you is the one that feels most human. The need for immediate relief. The instinct that saves you is the one that feels cold and mechanical. The willingness to be uncomfortable now so you don't die later. So here's the final question. Which mistake would kill you first? Overfeeding the fire and running out of fuel? Sealing the room and suffocating on smoke? or soaking your clothing with sweat and losing insulation. Think about it. Next time, the medieval forest. You're lost, no shelter, no fire, and you have 3 days before the search party arrives. But there's no search party. See you then.